I'm just going to give you a short rundown on a couple of events that will follow this. Next week we have an event on Myanmar and the difficulties of reporting. As you may know, there's been a major crisis in Rakhine State in the west of Burma, and that journalists are getting in trouble just from reporting the truth. So that's going to be on March 28th, so that's a week today. 2 weeks today there will be an event on Thailand, a political discussion on young Thai politicians. Okay, there's a bit of excitement about a young fella called Thanatorn, and whether he can inject some fresh blood into the political scene, which has been pretty quiet here for the last few years. Anyway, you've all come here tonight for a very big panel. We don't normally have this many people on, so what we're going to do is try and keep it short, and then everyone on stage here will have a short say, and then we'll open the floor to questions. There's a microphone in the middle of the floor there. People will be able to ask questions. Okay, I just want to give a word of thanks to the UN Environment people, Adam and his colleagues, who have done a great job helping us get a fairly impressive panel here, and they range from, at the far end, Dr. Supat is a former Director General of the Pollution Control Department. He's going to start off today's presentation just to give you a bit of a rundown on, as you may have seen, Thailand has had air pollution problems in Bangkok, which, okay, we normally see air pollution in the north, in Chiang Mai, but Bangkok has had problems. So Dr. Supat is going to explain some of that to you. And then we've got Helena here, 3 up from me, is going to give you a bit of a rundown on the international scene, or that she's from the Clean Air Coalition. And we also have other experts from Korea and India. We've got a very special guest in the middle, who's probably more famous than everyone in this room. Dia, thank you for coming from Mumbai. She's a goodwill ambassador for the UN Environment Program. We have Vijay there from PayTM. And Mark Lin, and so they're going to give us some industry perspective, but also tell you a little of what's going on in other countries which have got a very similar problem. Anyway, I will go now to Dr. Supat. If you could kick things off. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim, for the introduction. I will just spend a few minutes to give you some information of what happened to the air quality in Bangkok in the last 2 months. You might be wondering what happened. You are seeing a lot of haze in Bangkok, and whether the air is worse than before or it's getting better. So I have gathered some data from Pollution Control Department, and I will show you on the screen, so that you can also see the picture as well. So I will skip this. I'm actually now, after retired from the government, I have been with the Faculty of Public Health, Thammasat University, and I'm also working at the Asian Institute of Technology as well. So I give you this overview first. This actually the air quality trends in Bangkok. The first slide here on the left is the number of vehicle population in Bangkok. It's hit around 9.8 million the end of last year. 9.8. and half of that are motorcycle. And the next three graphs here show the trends of pollution. This one is for carbon monoxide. From 1992 up to 2016. In spite of increasing vehicle population, the level of carbon monoxide has declined drastically. The purple line here is level of carbon monoxide near the roadside. And the blue line here is the level of carbon monoxide away from the roadside, at least 50 meters from major road. And this graph also shows the declining trend of total suspended particulate, big particle, mostly coming from construction and fugitive emission. And this shows the concentration of PM10. I will show you PM2.5 later, but it's also on the declining trend as well. This is the monitoring data that I have obtained from Pollution Control Department. They have a quite extensive air quality monitoring network in Bangkok. The nitrogen oxide concentration as well in the last 5-6 years also shown declining trend. But ozone concentration still on a rising as well. Sulfur dioxide in the air in Bangkok also declining. And this is a result of the removal of sulfur from the fuel, both diesel fuel and gasoline fuel used in Thailand. At the moment, the fuel, both diesel and gasoline fuel meet Euro 4 European standard. And the vehicle as well, the new vehicle also meeting vehicle emission standard of Euro 4 from EU as well. And now this is the level of annual average of PM 2.5, which has been talking about, has been mentioned for the last couple of months in Thailand, in particular PM 2.5 in Bangkok. And you see this is the trend of annual average. The highest was in 2013, 35 microgram per cubic meter. And last year, it came down to 26 microgram per cubic meter. Also show declining trend of PM 2.5 in Bangkok. And this is the year when we start implementing Euro 4 for fuel quality and the vehicle emission standard for new car. When we look at 24-hour average, this is from 1st of January until 31st of December, starting back 2011 up to the last couple months in this year. The dark green line here, you see, this is the level of 24-hour or daily average of PM 2.5 in Bangkok. And this is what you will see every year, high peak of daily concentration of PM 2.5 during the first couple months of the year. And this is a result of the weather condition. The meteorological condition during this time of the year will limit the dispersion of pollution in the air. That is why we see high peak of PM 2.5 and also PM10 as well during the first couple months of the year. But when you look at PM 2.5 this year, it's actually lower than the previous year. And this also shown in the annual average that the PM 2.5 in Bangkok has gone down when we compared from 35 to 26 microgram. That's about 25% reduction of PM 2.5 in Bangkok on the annual average. But we have to admit that we still have short-term air pollution problem, in particular PM2.5 in Bangkok. But it's not worse than last year or previous year. And you will see it actually somewhat below than the previous year. So this is the situation that data from monitoring station of PCD that I have collected. So I would probably stop now and then maybe come back later.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Supat. I'll just remind you, we've all got a chance to delve further and put questions to people like Dr. Supat. Helena, are you... Okay, Helena Valdes is head of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. This is, you're going to give us a bit of an idea on the big picture in terms of air pollution around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And good evening, everybody. We didn't get lost, we got stuck in traffic. So air pollution is one problem, and then the quantity of moving vehicles is another. No, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is something quite unique in the global community. It's a bunch of governments and other stakeholders, many international and NGOs, coming together to address a multiple problem, and that is pollution of a number of these pollutants that Dr. Supat was mentioning, but looking at it from a multiple benefit perspective. Meaning that many of these pollutants, black carbon, which is a component of the PM2.5, the most tiny part of it, ozone, tropospheric ozone, that was also mentioned here, methane, and also cooling factors such as HFCs that are being used for refrigeration and cooling. They are short-lived in the atmosphere, meaning that they live in the atmosphere for either days or weeks or up to a few years. But they're also contributing to climate change and to global warming. So when we talk about air pollution, that is one of the biggest environmental health risks as it stands, killing more people than malaria, and also being equally harmful for the lung capacity as smoking. So it's kind of the most kept, the World Health Organization that we work very closely with in the UN Environment Program is calling it this silent killer, because we don't talk about it. And we will have some specialists here on health who can tell you more about the specific impact on the different health organs that we have. But I think that's the key message that I would like to convey to this community, that globally speaking, as of the last 5 years, I would say, there is an increasing awareness and knowledge about the multiple impacts, not only on in general health terms, but also on very specific health problem that is caused from different pollutants, but also climate forcing and actually impact on crop growth. Because ozone that Dr. Supat was mentioning is, globally speaking, losing 50 to 100 tons of basic crops, meaning that air pollution is not only harmful to our human health, it actually stops the growth of maize, wheat, and other base crops. And it stopped the growth of them, and it also reduces the nutrition levels. And I think this is issues that we don't talk about too often. The third big global topic is, of course, climate change. And pollution in terms of greenhouse gases is global and lives in the atmosphere for hundreds of years, the long-lived CO2 and other long-lived climate forcers. But many of the short-lived ones, such as PM2.5 with black carbon or tropospheric ozone, they are also thousands times sometimes more locally forcing than CO2, and we don't think about this in an integrated way when countries and cities do their planning. So what we have done at the global community, we have a coalition of governments and scientific organizations, international and NGOs dealing with these issues, but most importantly in Asia Pacific, there is a forum and a partnership for clean air that is meeting this week here in Bangkok. That's why we are all here with the governments of Asia Pacific. And we have worked together in launching a report, an assessment that has now taken quite a few years to pull together, because it's also a very sensitive issue. Air pollution is mainly, we saw now the figures from Dr. Supat coming from different transportation sources. Diesel, for example, dirty diesel or diesel that are not up to the standards that now a city like Bangkok has already started to introduce and enforce the use of Euro 5, if I'm correct, which is a very, will be coming, which is a very high standard. Euro 6 is the highest standard in diesel, and you have heard and seen and written about probably much of the scandal around the Volkswagen and other car industries that have faked the results of the real pollution sources, results from using even Euro 6 diesel and the combustion in their engines. But cars and transportation is not the only source. And this is actually, that's when it starts to become more controversial as well, because agriculture is a source of emission. It's impacted by these emissions, but it's also a source of emissions. Waste, the management, incorrect management of municipal solid waste and other waste, like agriculture waste, burning of waste, for example. I believe I saw some figures some time back from Bangkok, where actually during, after the crop season, a lot of the particulate matters that created huge problems in Bangkok came from open burning of agriculture waste. And this is still a problem in many of our cities. It comes from the countryside, but it impacts on the cities. I'm just coming now from Mongolia. I was there for a while. And 80% of the pollution during winter seasons come from heating, burning raw coal in-house to keep warm. And that is my fourth point, that it's not only about what is called ambient air pollution and external air pollution, it's very much also an issue of indoor pollution. And there is where the health aspects are also bigger for, especially for children and vulnerable population. So if you think about a city like Ulaanbaatar, where the pollution concentrations of PM2.5 and PM10 during winter can go up to 3,000. You saw the figure from Dr. Supat. I think you said it was 25. Annual average. So if you think on a certain day in Ulaanbaatar, you have more than 3,000. This is basically, you don't see anything. And it's to keep warm, and you need to keep warm to live, but you also need to breathe to live. So the big campaign that we are launching as a global community from this Climate and Clean Air Coalition with the World Health Organization, UN Environment, many of the cities around the world, is a campaign that we call Breathe Life, because in the end, we need to breathe life. You need to breathe, you need to drink, you need to eat, you need to live, you need to have a proper life, but breathing is the one thing you can never stop doing. So by looking at agriculture, transport, fuels, cooking and heating, household energy in general, but also a series of measures which includes industrial processes, etc., which are the more, let's say, traditional and conventional emission control measures. The group of scientists in this region will be publishing very soon a report to which governments and others can find inspiration of solutions that have been, and policies and technical solutions that have been put into place in many of the Asian countries already. And if they are scaled up in big, let me give you the figure because I don't want to give you the wrong figure. It can save, Dr. Supat, Professor Supat is one of the many authors, and here are other authors to this report. And if all of these measures are put into place, on one hand, we could reduce global warming with more than 0.5 degrees, which is quite a lot. If you think of the target of the Paris Agreement, where we need to limit to a maximum of 2 degrees in the next 100 years. But we can also save very many lives, and I'm not going to I don't find the figure in this draft right now, but there is a huge amount of multiple benefits to be earned by implementing air quality measures in all these different sectors. And it's something that needs to be done based on the awareness of people, because we heard today in our conference that in many countries, Philippines being one, and I think some of our colleagues are here, where there is big demonstrations when governments are trying to introduce harsher measures when it comes to diesel, for example, or other implementing measures to control air pollution. People don't like it. And you have private sector entities that are very keen on actually implementing better technologies, but they don't do it because it's not regulated, and some governments are still not ready to put regulations into place, which means that we need to raise the awareness through institutions like yours and the written word of media as well on what's the impact, what are the solutions available, and what is the risk of not taking action. And many of the panelists here can tell you much more about the specifics of their situation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helena. Okay, we're now going to hear from Professor Yun Chong Hong, who is from Seoul University, and he's going to give you an academic and science perspective on some of the health aspects.
Thank you very much. I'm actually a medical doctor and environmental epidemiologist studying mostly air pollution and health. So I'm supposed to give us some talk on the impact and why we have such a problem when we are exposed to air pollution. So I think it are well known now. About 7 million people actually die from the PM2.5 exposure every year. Actually, the number is a little different depending on the study from the WHO or other international group. But even though there is a really update of numbers, that is almost similar, about around 7 million. Including the deaths from the outdoor pollution and also household air pollution. So the number is not really small. And also the people who are exposed to the higher level than the WHO guideline, that is actually the 10 microgram per cubic meter for the PM2.5. It's actually 92% of the globally. So most of the people are exposed higher than the guideline. The guideline level is supposed to be a level below that we are safe. But there is also the argument, really there is a level of the safety, but when you say that is a safe level, 92% of the people live above the level, and in Asia actually that is worse. So much more than actually almost people live above the level. So the people living in Asia are actually in danger in terms of the air pollution. So that is the impact size of the air pollution. But the people may wonder why we have such a huge number of deaths when we just breathe. So that is really a huge question, and probably many people wonder, that is a really right number? 7 million people die due to the just breathing air. So, but the PM2.5 is actually the particle diameter is less than 2.5 micrometer. When you compare the hair, so the hair diameter is about 100 micrometer diameter. So it's PM2.5 is a really tiny one. Actually, we cannot see without microscope. So such a tiny particle it's free to go down to the lung when we breathe. So it go down to the lung and to the end of the lung tissue. We call that is alveolar. That is a gas exchange organ. So you go down to the lung, and there is an accumulation of such as tiny particles. But the tiny particle is not just particle. Even though we say just that the size is small, it's true, its size is small, but that is condensed chemicals from the diesel car, the emission and industrial emission and the cooking. So there are many different sources to produce such chemicals, and the chemicals in the air condense into particles. So particle is not just non-toxic particle, really toxic particles. That is PM 2.5. So when such a toxic small particles go down into the lung, that actually cause the oxidative stress. That is a medical reaction and causing inflammation. So it causes inflammation in the lung. But the inflammation is not just confined in the lung. It of course causes lung problem, asthma and chronic bronchitis and COPD. So that is the people have a lung problem when we expose to air pollution. But inflammation spread out the whole body, and also the small tiny particles also can go to the whole body because it's so tiny. It is circulated in the stream of the blood, so it can go to the brain, it can go to the heart, it can go to anywhere in the body. So it can cause inflammation in the whole body. That's why we have not just lung problem, but also cardiovascular disease, also stroke, also the cancer. So it can cause really many well-known chronic disease. So that's why we have the high number of deaths. But you may say that, but we do not see people die in the street, just they breathe. So we don't see such people who just die in the street. The people die in the hospital mostly due to cardiovascular disease, due to stroke, due to cancer. But that death is actually accelerated by the exposure to air pollution. The death actually caused by the air pollution, but they die of the well-known other disease. So that's why we have a very big numbers. The numbers mostly the 4 diseases, cardiovascular and stroke. That is actually the 80% of the disease associated with air pollution. The other 20% is lung disease. That is COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and the lung cancer. So altogether, that is 7 million deaths annually in the world. And what is worse is almost 2/3 occurs in Asia. So majority of deaths actually occurs in the region. So it's a really huge problem in Asia. And the issue of the Asia, actually we talked about the sources now, but the PM 2.5 is a small particle causing such a disease, and that is actually similar to cigarette smoking, and also very similar in terms of the impact size, as Helena said. Actually, cigarette smoking also causes around 7 million people deaths every year, and this air pollution also causes a very similar number of deaths. So it's just similar, but cigarette smoking is source is cigarette. But air pollution have a really diverse sources. So firstly, outdoor, the cars and industry, and indoor, household, the Nepal and Mongolia, so it's different sources. Also, we have haze issue in Southeast Asia, and the forest fires, and dust and sandstorm in the East Asian countries. So there are so many different sources. So these sources actually contribute to all deaths. But what we don't know is that even though we know the total number 7 million, but we don't know actually the specific contribution from the different sources. So I think that is an area we need to study more. Still, we don't know exactly specific contribution from the each sources. But altogether, it's really big. So that's why we need to study, particularly from the collaboration study. I think we need to mobilize such a collaboration from the exposure scientists and monitoring people and health professionals like me. So to have the evidence, to make an evidence to tell the policymakers to specifically what is the really problem areas and what is the priority action you need to take. So I think that is the future we need to take action.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Now, we have two guests from India. We're going to start. Vijay, do you want to start, or would you? Okay, he's a gentleman. Okay, we have Dia Mirza here, who is a Bollywood star. She's probably got more friends on Twitter than or Facebook than everyone in the room. But Dia, I've learnt a little bit about your work as a Goodwill Ambassador for the UN Environment Program. What drew you into that sort of work? You thought that this was a problem worth fighting, and obviously air pollution is an enormous problem in your homeland in India.
Well, when people ask me why, I always ask them how not. Why not? And because it's very simple. I think for each one of us that discovers the gravity of the issue and the enormity of the issue, it's unimaginable to think how we would not want to find a way to become agents of change and work towards, constructive, positive action. I enjoy a certain popularity, a certain following, and if I can use my voice and my celebrity to educate more people and help them understand the impact and the implication of poor air quality in each of our lives and communities across the world, and in doing so then empower governments to make better policy, influence industry to improve their practices. It all then just adds up. But the fact of the matter is that I'm as human as any one of you in this room. And when I see things go as drastically wrong as they do, I am overwhelmed with a sense of helplessness. I feel very, very small and minute and helpless. And I know that many of us feel that very often when we are, faced with the enormity of the issues that we find ourselves surrounded by in today's world. But the only thing that keeps me going is the work that I'm able to do to build awareness. I know at least I'm doing something to make a difference. And I think every one of us has a voice, and we can all be agents of change. And it's really about allowing ourselves to be impacted by the reality. Allow it to sink in, hit you, hurt you, trouble you. I have, back home in India, we have over 22 million children that live in street situations. And every time I see that PM 2.5 level cross 250, 380, 450, I think about those kids. And it really bothers me. It breaks my heart. And then when you think about the fact that 92% of the world is experiencing poor air quality, it really makes you wonder, what can we all do collectively to take cognizance of this fact and stop fighting and bickering about the numbers and say, hey, this is a reality. It may vary in places. The contributing factors may vary. But the fact is that we know that our lifestyles and our work practices and the way we do business and the way we live our lives every day is impacting our air, and all of us need to do more. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll come back to you shortly. Vijay Sharma is the CEO of PayTM. He's another UN Environment Clean Air patron. Vijay, tell me a bit about your company's involvement, why you got into this.
Yeah, I think it just made me feel horrible, terrible at a very different scale, just hearing from Professor today. Obviously, some of us would have never guessed that the scale would include like 7 million deaths. I think that is extraordinary. It happened in the lovely city of New Delhi, where I come from, where city was totally, because of my work, my place, my affection city, it became pitch dark, like we just talked about how we couldn't see something next to us. And then my young 5-year-old son started to cough. And then slowly the doctor said that if you can afford, there is only one treatment to this, that you should leave the city. City of economic growth in this world today are telling people not to be there. They're speaking by the language of their air. They're speaking by the language of the treatment they're doing to us, unknown to us, unstated to us. I believe that as a capitalist or a commercial intention businessman in this room, I'd say that companies and countries look for economic growth, and that happens from talent and the capable people, and people are aware at least at a very high talent level that this is not the city that I should be in. New Delhi is not a favorite city because Bangalore is, and Bangalore is a favorite city because the air is better than New Delhi is. New Delhi and Bangalore are worse than Silicon Valley is. That is why India will never be able to attract that. China went through its own cycle and discovered that if we tackle the pollution, then we can bring back those Chinese who have gone out of China and then bring back the talent home. I think this is the time when, as countrymen and as economic center of growth, we understand that clean air is not part of an agenda of a goodwill. It is a part of an agenda of a growth. It is part of an agenda of survival. It is very sad to know that it is one of those activities which could have had attention and solutions much before that we would have had the growth which was unsustainable in terms of air and unsustainable in terms of life that we live. I believe it comes upon a generation to change the fate of a country and fate of a generation. Here is the time that each one of us here in this room, here in this country, or in UNEP and every other organization that we can contribute, have a chance to change and build a legacy that next generations can look up to us and not say that you just consumed everything and what did you leave for us. I think it is painful to know every day deeper stories, and I remain scared that the city that I'm going to take a flight to will make me die one day. Sooner, faster than other city I could have been. How horrible it is. It is sinking feeling as I'm sitting here that I do not know how will I get out of the city because my work brings me there. My family brings me there. My family, in fact, my wife one of the days asked me that I do not know what money you want if you can't earn a life that we can live better. It is that level of pain that I speak here with. And I do not know one lifetime of a work of mine will even be a needle mover, but I truly believe that the world needs to be aware, and every effort of ours and mine hopefully goes in that awareness and action that we can take. It is a challenge in front of us, in front of our eyes. It is covering us. The air is covering us, and the air is not clean.
Thank you. Okay. We've got two more guests. Molin over there. He's been educated at Harvard. He's a smart young man, but I think he's going to need a little bit more, maybe a little bit of luck if you want to get more people to ride push bikes in Bangkok. Is that right? Can you tell us how you're going to do it?
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't heard about Mobike, we started in early 2016. So this is our 2-year anniversary. So we were the first first and largest smart bike sharing, dockless bike sharing. So we are the first and largest smart bike, dockless smart bike sharing company in the world. So what we do is, unlike the traditional docking station model, we free up the bikes by equipping every single bike with a smart lock, where we have SIM card, GPS, and Bluetooth, so we can track every single bike. So the analogy is the original docking station model is kind of like PC, right? So the reason why many of them failed was because it's not mobile enough, right? So you have to park at a certain location, and then you can track the bikes. Whereas our products, with the smart locks, you can track every single bike. So the data becomes very valuable, not only for the company, but also for the government. So that's how we started. And in less than 2 years, we have achieved, we're actually humbled by the scale we have achieved so far. So we have 200 million users on our platform. And every day, 30 million trips happening on our platform. And we're generating a 30 terabyte of data on our platform. And actually, this for-profit company came from a very idealistic start. So when our founder started the company, that was in 2000. So when she had the idea, it was around like 2015. And that China at that time had gone through so much economic growth, right? So everybody's caring about GDP, but nobody's caring about the so-called the gross happiness index. And then, so people lost track, and then the quality of air became worse and worse. And you've seen a lot of news covering the quality of air in China, so it's horrible. So she had this idea to free up the bicycles in the city, so it encourages people to ride more and more bicycles. And then once we started, and the demand was huge. And then we gradually, we rapidly expanded to many cities. And today we've penetrated over 24 countries and into over 200 cities. So we're still learning. It's a very humbling process for us. And but we're honored to be part of the part of the process, part of the mission to reduce the pollution in our cities. So every day, so far in total, we have reduced our CO2 emission by 500,000 tons, and we have been putting off over 200,000 cars off the road. So we don't think that's sufficient. We're still trying to do more. But we're actually really pleased to see the small step we have taken. And so the way we approach this problem, the quality of air problem, is from the private sector. Right? So the way we started was we literally reinvented the wheel. Right? So we want to make sure that the bikes we put on the street would not become garbage in a short period of time. Right? So we literally reinvented the wheel by having the best material. So for example, small things like the tire, right? So tire cause a lot of maintenance problem. And we work with Dow Chemicals to have environmentally friendly materials in our tire. And it's airless, right? So we don't have to worry about puncture. Because once the bikes become punctured, then it's essentially garbage on the street, right? So we don't want to cause more pollution on the street. So that's how we approach this problem from the private sector. Yeah, so I'll end here. I'll keep it short. If you have any questions, feel free to fire away.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, now just to finish the presentations, is Tara is going to, from Greenpeace, the Thailand Country Director, Greenpeace Southeast Asia. He's just going to show a couple of short slides as well. After this, people will be able to ask questions. Thank you. Tara's been with Greenpeace about 10 years. He's a man that hails from Aranya Pratet, which has probably got pretty good air at the moment.
Okay, let me start with a snapshot. It's not really long presentation, but I would go really quickly, go to the points of the snapshot on our perspective related to the air pollution crisis in Thailand and in Bangkok. So, okay. Right, yeah. Yep. Oh. Okay. This right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we Greenpeace has been campaigning on air pollution from the perspective of socio-economic point of view. So we looking at our basic fundamental right to healthy environment, including clean air. I think Professor already mentioned that. For Thailand, the WHO and World Bank study and stated that air pollution, in this case, the criteria pollutant that we're talking about, sulfur, NOx, PM10, PM2.5, and other criteria pollutant, including ozone, responsible for 50,000 premature deaths in Thailand. If we go down to PM2.5 related to premature death, it's about maybe around 32,000 premature death per year for Thailand. I'm here not debating about number, but I would like to put forward on this because of if we talk about Thailand standard, and we have to take into account international standard, especially WHO safe guidelines, safe limit. So across the board, 14 cities in Thailand that installing and monitoring and recording PM2.5 pollution is exceeding WHO safety limit, which is I think yearly is about 10 microgram per cubic meter. We've been using data from pollution control department to actually forming sort of how we call city ranking related to PM2.5. Some years increasing, some year a little bit decreasing. So, but if we look at across 14 cities around Thailand, it always above exceeding the WHO safety limit. Some city may be meeting Thailand's PM2.5 standard yearly. At the beginning of this year, maybe I would put forward is not maybe if we look at pollution control data, is the historical perspective up and down in terms of PM2.5 condensation during the period of the year. But if we look at the beginning of this year until the end of February, we can see that 52 days during the 2-month period, there are some location in Bangkok has the level of PM2.5 exceeding the WHO safety limit on the daily basis. This is the data that we have. The dotted line, black dotted line is the WHO safety limit. In the middle, the red one is US EPA, and the orange one is Thailand standard for 24 hours, especially when it comes to PM2.5. We know that Bangkok has millions of cars, but at the same time, if we look at what other sources of PM2.5 pollution that contributing to the air quality in Bangkok. So we look at eastern seaboard area where we have a lot of industrial development, including coal-fired power plant. This is one of the model that we run using geochem modeling, air modeling from Harvard University, and then we are projecting the large area where the PM2.5 from coal-fired power plant in that area actually contributing to the larger area, not just in Rayong or in eastern seaboard, but also in Bangkok. In Chiang Mai, at the moment, I think facing PM2.5 level, very high concentration. There are a lot of group of people, local group, actually producing website materials or communication to actually communicate to the people and then appeal to the local government, not just only stop burning, open burning, but also how to come up with solution. This is the girl in the northern part of Thailand in the video. Chiang Mai is also related to the larger, how we say, the pollution, trans-boundary heat pollution that is coming from neighboring country, from Laos, in particular Cambodia. In the past 6 years, 7 years, Cambodia has been one of the top when it comes to deforestation because of the promotion of grass crop and other commodity, rubber and other commodity that into some area and then clear cutting the forest and become one of the source that contributing to Thailand air quality. In 2015, we have haze pollution from forest fire in Indonesia actually covering the southern part of Thailand. This is going, Thailand is not alone, but becoming related to a larger trans-boundary haze pollution in ASEAN. I would like to end with saying this because of even we have a very good corporate of monitoring system for air quality in Bangkok, but other area in Thailand, in the northeastern part of Thailand, there is only one monitoring station by Pollution Control Department that's tracking PM2.5. So when it comes to that, we need to put the question mark on it is air quality monitoring system that we have in Thailand that allow us to have making a informed decision when it comes to polluted day and how we go to this day. Do we need masks? Do we need to stay indoor, outdoor, so on and so forth. In Chiang Mai, surprisingly, the U.S. Consulate General in Chiang Mai actually put up a totally different informed decision for American people in Chiang Mai. Climate Change Data Center also setting up so-called dashboard, the outdoor air quality monitoring system to monitor and tracking PM2.5, including coming up with air quality index for those. Sorry, in Thai, but I just want to show you that some government agency, especially the Department of Health, also give an informed decision to local population in Tak, in Bangkok in the past month, things like that, to warn people about health impact from air pollution, either PM2.5 or PM10. The university in the northern part of Thailand also coming up with more robust sort of tracking how PM2.5 actually concentrate or distributed. This is the satellite map that using satellite data to actually mapping concentration of PM2.5 in the northern part of Thailand. You can see that this is one of the worst situations that the people in the northern part of Thailand facing when it comes to PM2.5 pollution. Some people also go a little bit beyond because of we are not talking about problem, but also how we actually get information so that we can make an informed decision. This is equipment that installed in some international university in the north. There are 2 or 3 monitoring stations of pollution control department, but the rest is private monitoring system that actually monitor the air quality in Chiang Mai. Some people also look at mountain. I was studying in Chiang Mai. I always look at Doi Suthep. Doi Suthep is an indicator for air pollution and air qualities. The bad day, polluted day, you can't see Doi Suthep because of smog and fog and haze pollution. This is I think some people, local people and group in many areas in Thailand try to come up with how we get a right decision access to information where we can actually making a right decision or informed decision, and then looking at how we tackle the problem. In the south, sometimes people looking at Got Nu Got Mel in Songkhla because of it's not too far from the coast. When we have haze pollution from Indonesia, for example. So I end my presentation here. Thank you.
Okay, there's a microphone in the middle of the floor there. If people would like to ask questions, maybe I can ask the first question. Dr. Supat, can I throw one to you if I may? The government, the national government, is not revealing figures for particulate matter of 2.5. Should they be doing that, or can you? Is there a way to encourage that, or why aren't they doing that? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm not representing the government at the moment.
Yes.
I'm out of the service now.
Maybe
But
just some insights.
But as far as I know, data is available in the form of concentration, microgram per cubic meter, in the website of PCD. Everyone can access to that figure, and it is available publicly. But the problem is that concentration has not been reported in a form of air quality index.
Okay.
The air quality index been reported only for PM10, ozone, nitrogen oxide, and so on and so on, but not yet for PM2.5. But in terms of data, it's in the website. You can get the concentration data, and that is very good for research purpose as well.
Okay, but many people are saying it should be in the air quality index.
As far as I've been informed from PCD is that there are still very few PM2.5 monitor in Bangkok, and they are trying to increase the number of PM2.5 monitor in Bangkok. So once they have enough monitor in Bangkok, then they will release the PM2.5 in a form of air quality index.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got a question on the floor.
I'm Andrew Silver.
Sorry, I should have said, can you just give your name and tell us where you're from, if you're a club member or what you do?
I'm a club member. I'm un-American. I'm a retired epidemiologist.
Very good, thanks. And your name?
Andrew Silver.
Thank you, Andrew.
I have two questions about aqicn.org, probably for the Thai panelists. This website shows at 3-hour intervals roughly maps for the whole world of the PM 2.5 scores with the green, yellow, orange, red, and purple indicators. I look at this every day. First, I want to ask you, do you trust this website? And second, because it skips from Phetchaburi to Suratani, and I'm thinking of moving to Hua Hin, can you tell me if there's a way to get air quality data for the Hua Hin Cha Am area.
Tara or Dr. Supat, have you any ideas on that?
I start first. The AQICN.org is a global air pollution project focusing on PM 2.5 pollution around the world. The team that working on this data actually extract the information in concentration, PM 2.5 concentration from every single air pollution monitoring system on Earth, as far as they can access to that. And I think they actually thank to every environmental protection agency, US EPA, and also pollution control department. So they use that data that Dr. Supat talking about. We can actually access to the website and then get some technical to actually link online and then translate into formula and then form air quality index for PM 2.5. I have to say, because of the information is around the world, so it has to be trusted. But we also need to balance with other initiative on tracking air quality index around the world, so that we have actually balanced information about the situation in country and also around the world.
Could I respond to that as well?
Please.
But I need to show you something on the computer. Because I expect that this question will be raised. So I have prepared. I'm prepared. Can I?
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Supat. Thank you, Vijay.
Okay. But not this file. This one. Yeah. This is the website that we mentioned. Right. AQICN.org. And you see how do they do the calculation for the AQI. It's basically based on hourly value. But when you do the calculation of AQI, you have to refer to the ambient air quality standard. And there has not been any such an hour average standard for PM 2.5. So in doing the calculation of AQI, you have to use 24-hour average concentration, not hourly average. And you will expect sometime hourly average concentration will go up high and down and high and down. But on the average of daily average, it will then start to level a little bit. So if you use the hourly value, then you will get a very high AQI value. In addition to that, this website actually do the calculation based on US EPA method. And the US EPA annual standard or daily standard of PM 2.5 is 35. But the standard in Thailand is 50. So if you follow the Thai standard of 50 and US 35, the level of 50 microgram per cubic meter in Thailand will be 100 AQI. But for the US 35 is 100 AQI. So whatever measures here, if it's above 35, and using US EPA standard as been used by this website, you will get an AQI exceed 100 all the time. For example, if the PM2.5 concentration on a daily average basis is 40, when you do the calculation based on Thai standard, it will be below 100.
Doctor, I want to extend this question, and I think to the question, I also am nearly going to ask the same question. One thing that I learned in the day-to-day in this conference was that every country sort of have put their own standard. AQI CN is China, if you would say. AQI US is US, and Thailand would be TH, and India is I. And sort of normalization happens on a particular number that different countries have decided their own number, and then there is US on 35 and Thailand on 55. My question to you, Doctor, would be, why different countries are choosing different standards? Are we different humans as DNAs? Or I mean, why 55? Why not 35? Or why in India it is 60 and so on?
Okay. Maybe Dr. Hong could.
Yeah, I mean,
in a better position to answer.
It's an academic question.
But
so
first, I would like
Dr.
to.
Hong, please.
I come from India. I can handle more.
Actually, all these different standards, the among the countries actually from the different standard, different level of the want to achieve. For example, actually, as I said, the WHO guideline, that is a kind of level below which everybody is safe. But as I said, 92% of the people actually live above the level. So that is not practical in terms of policy. So each country set different level, but based on the recommendation by WHO. The WHO recommends 3 levels: interim target 1, interim target 2, interim target 3. So it's different. For example, PM2.5 is a 10, 20, 35, something like that. This is different. Actually, the level is suggested, proposed by the WHO, and each country take that, considering that its feasibility to achieve that level. But the level, for example, interim target 1 is the level 90% of mortality higher than the guideline level. So that means if we take the interim target 1, the country allow 90% higher than guideline level due to the air pollution. So
Okay. Dia, do you want to have your say?
I just want to quickly add to what he's saying, because it's been an observation. This is how I evaluate what I should believe or follow. So if I have a government app on my phone, I assume that the number that is projected on it is a little lower than the real number. Because I've done comparisons even between ministry, like different government bodies have different apps, and I've seen a difference between one and the other as well. So I think if it is crossing 100, whether it's 147 or it's 120 or it's 135, the point is it's higher than what is healthy. So that should be enough for us to take the measures that we need to. I mean, whether it is using protection, using a mask, or whatever we need to. That's what I feel, because I think the drivers are different. There's policy, there's government, there's industry. There's all kinds of things that are...
There's also governments who don't want social problems from shutting down polluting industries.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Tara, last one on this, and then we'll go to the next question.
Just quick one. It's not about we want to have a US EPA air quality index in Thailand, but we want to have air quality index for PM2.5. Either we have few stations in Thailand, but we have each other way to actually looking at it. So Chiang Mai University already done with their sort of initiative. So why the government not doing that? Because when I look at application air quality index for Thailand, I am actually don't look at it because of it not take into account one of the most health threatening air pollutant, which is PM2.5. So it's just about that. That's my point.
Did that answer your question a little bit, Andrew? You'd like a monitoring station in Hua Hin, is that right? Yeah. Okay, that's the story of life almost, isn't it? Have we a second question up there, Peter? Are you next?
Not Peter.
Sorry?
That's my brother. He's not here, thank you. I really do like being compared to him. What I was just going to say is Michael Mackey, freelance journalist, brother of Peter, former friend of Jim. It wasn't until we got to Kontara's presentation that the word coal came up. Now, my understanding is that coal, particularly the growth of coal-powered power stations as China industrialized, caused the situation where at one point 5 of the most polluted cities in the world were Chinese cities. So this is an open question. How much is coal responsible for air pollution as opposed to vehicles, which seem to be getting the brunt of criticism? And isn't this, if one may say so, a particular problem within Thailand, where we're probably 2 or 3 weeks off from EGAT warning us all that power cuts might happen as we get into the height of the hot season. And yet the government never seems to push through reforms on the feed-in tariff issue for solar power, and I can't remember what the last was on this, that it was supporting the building of a coal-fired plant in Satun in the south.
Okay, for those of you who don't know...
I've just been told it's two coal power plants.
Okay, just for those of you who don't know, and some of our guests, EGAT is the Electricity Generating Authority. The government has proposed building coal plants in several places in the south, Krabi and then Tepa down in Songkhla. But the question essentially is just... it looks like Tara would like to have a shot at answering it, and then Helena, would you like to have a say?
Yeah, quick answer to that is that number one emission of air pollution in the ambient air is coming from first open burning, followed by transportation, and then electricity generation, and then other the industrial activity. According to air pollution modeling that we work with Harvard University, the current coal-fired power station in Thailand actually responsible for about 1,000 p.m/day. But if in the future, if Thailand is expanding coal-fired power station in a big way, the number will climb up to 4,000 p.m/day, compared to 50,000 air pollution that causing people die early. So it's not a big source compared to other economic activity, but if we let it go, it's going to be contributing to air quality in anywhere because of it long range boundary transport air pollutant when it comes to PM2.5.
Helena.
So I'm not an expert on coal. I don't have any numbers in my head. But what I can say is that making an economic case, globally speaking, renewable energy and solar is now cheaper per kilowatt hour than coal-generated energy, electricity. So that's for the first time, I think that was last year, that this correlation actually happened. And in many countries, such as India, for example, there is very ambitious incentives towards, I believe last week or a few weeks ago, there was the solar, the Solar Alliance. And I think that in terms of if you remember what President Trump won his elections on, was one of the promises was to reopen the coal industry and to also scrap the regulations that had been put in place with the previous administration. But economically speaking, even in the US, the industry was saying this does not make sense. So I think in terms of that kind of economic argument, the future seems brighter. When it comes to those coal-producing countries that want to continue selling their coal, as I said, I just come from Mongolia. One of the bigger export industries in Mongolia is coal, and they have coal mines, and all of their energy plants are coal-driven and also highly pollutant. But it's not only the energy, as mentioned by my colleague here, energy generation or electricity generation that is polluting from coal. It's also, as I mentioned, the use of coal for household energy and burning raw coal in a stove, either to cook or to heat yourself. And in terms of what we talked about before, it's the premature death ratio that we were saying that up to 7 million premature deaths are due to air pollution. More than half of that is from indoor pollution. So I know your question was about why is Thailand building more coal plants, and I'm not responding to that because I don't know. But there is also the fact that there is it's like we can discuss nuclear power if you want, which is another issue that is hot for this same purpose. But there is also an industry out there that is highly qualified and good at building power plants, coal power plants. And I think one of the questions might be like, how do you change an industry to something different? Because you might, like in Australia, are there any Australians here? Like Australia do not actually use coal at home, but they export it. So they are very clean at home, but they export the coal. And I would say that China, some occasions happens the same, and they have very good experts in building coal plants, and they want to reduce them at home, but of course that expertise goes somewhere. So I think the problem is bigger than just what happens in Thailand, and then there might be other incentives that also, but I think it's a good, I mean, again, public debate and journalists that looks into the figures and really follow the trail of why decisions are taken are really helping to explain to the population and to some policymakers, for that matters, why things happen. Because it might look like an attractive, I live in France right now, I'm not French, but I live in France, and there is very good nuclear power knowledge in France, and they are selling it everywhere because they have a huge amount of experts. So, I mean, you know, you push an envelope because you believe in it and because you see economic benefit, but if the market change and the perception change, it's like, I think in this energy field, something big is going to happen soon, and the renewable energy is tipping over, which I think is for the first time a good sign.
Okay, just one more, and we're going to go, just one from the floor, if I'm, sorry, from this, my end, if I may. I get the impression, just following what's been happening in Myanmar and Thailand, that we are close to that tipping point of moving away from coal power. If you just saw in Myanmar, the World Bank arm, the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, has said no dams on the main stream of the Salween River, which seems good. And it looks like the Suchi government is pushing for gas-powered plants in Rakhine State and elsewhere. So there's also an indication for the first time that EGAT is shifting away from coal and now seriously, finally, looking at solar and other sources, wind, partly led by, it would appear, the private sector. Supat or Tara, do you get that same feeling that finally there's some movement here in Thailand and we might begin to see some cleaner power? Do you believe that?
I think whether we like it or not, we can't turn against Thai or renewable energies revolution around the world. In Thailand, solar rooftop is booming. but the supporting mechanism for solar rooftop actually lag behind. So people, if we want to put our solar on our rooftop, so we can't sell electricity to the grid because of it prohibited, it's illegal at the moment. So we are actually trying to push forward on how government, maybe new government, we don't know, in next year will take that into account. So yeah, that's something I want to say.
Okay, just a sec. Is Kun Supat, do you want to say?
I think for the electricity in Thailand at the moment, it's been generated from natural gas. About 70% of the electricity in Thailand. And I think the issue of coal in Thailand that IGAT would like to use coal is for the to diversify the energy source. Because if you are depending upon single source of energy from natural gas, in some day that will have some problem with the energy security in the country, because you rely too much on one single source of energy.
Especially if that's a foreign source as well, if that's gas from
and natural gas is running out from the Gulf of Thailand, and have to import natural gas from Myanmar and also from Malaysia as well. So that is one of the reasons that they want to diversify the energy source. So coal come into the picture. And I'm not saying that I'm supportive of coal, but power plant using coal could be also use green coal technology as well. It depends on the limit that you are going to put onto that particular plant to limit the emission of particulate matter and also sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide. Technology is available, but it will then make electricity generated by coal power more expensive if you have all the technology put in. So if you are serious about using coal as a power source, then you need to put in control equipment, very strict, high efficiency control equipment to control those pollutants. But the only thing that would not be controlled is carbon dioxide, as you know. Carbon dioxide still, coal is the maximum or the highest, let's say, power source which generate high CO2 compared to natural gas. So if you use coal, you can control particulate matter, you can control nitrogen oxide, you can control sulfur dioxide, but you still have CO2 emission higher than the other. So in the future, renewable energy will come into the picture, and I believe that Thailand will also go toward the renewable energy more and more.
Okay. We've got one or two still at the floor. Whitney?
Thanks. Whitney Small. I'm actually a board member, and I loved the discussion tonight. But one of the things that concerns me is the lack of discussion about the real solutions that are possible. Now, in our Q&A session, we heard some of those, such as EGAT not accepting more than 1 megawatt of power self-delivered by a factory or a house, and not allowing anything back to the grid, thus closing solar power. Coal, Thailand, natural resources, natural gas, CNG, etc., part of why this is one of the 2 cities in Asia whose air pollution has actually improved, the other one being Taiwan, Taipei, because they send all their crappy industry to China. But for Thailand to take coal power is the worst decision that could possibly be made. That coal is being imported from Australia. It is the dirtiest, sulfurous coal available. It is the same coal that China uses. And China has the worst pollution ever. And I lived in Tianjin, Shanghai, and Beijing between 1984 and 2012. So I will vouch for how dirty that air is. So one of our problems here is that we're not discussing what has to be done in Thailand to make Thailand's air better. And that means EGAT has to change its ways. How do we get EGAT to accept power back to the grid? How do we get solar paneled roof tiles prevalent everywhere, free of duty in Thailand, manufactured in Thailand, so that we can put money back to the grid?
Okay, thank you. All right, we know who's on the next panel, but Tara, has Greenpeace got any solutions to this?
Tara, nice to see you again.
Okay, I don't, because, oh, sorry, it's okay. Yeah, EGAT is not changing enough. So I think this topic has to be another discussion maybe next time here in Foreign Correspondent Club of Thailand. But I think solution is out there. Because we sitting here in Bangkok, we don't see what's happening out there in the northeast, in the south. People actually, working with sun, working with sunlight. So
You can see them burning constantly.
No.
They need to stop burning. They need to neutralize. They need to nitrogize. They need to plow it back into the ground.
I know.
We allow them to keep burning, and it's killing people with asthma and lung disease.
Okay, give them a go.
Solution is out there, but the political will, the government policy, right? That the big chunk of how we actually the challenging that we have at the moment, because of we are under unusual government, military government, I have to say. But I think if we open up a space for citizens to actually working together and connecting together, the solution is out there. I have to say that, because I don't want to go down into how many community actually working toward renewable energy and try to be energy independent, energy self-sufficiencies, and actually creating a lot of jobs out of development of renewable energy investment in Thailand. Yeah.
Okay, are there any more questions there?
Peter Niemann, honorary member, but I used to work with United Nations ESCAP, and was about 16, 17 years ago, together with the Asian Development Bank, quite substantial in establishing the so-called Clean Air Initiative for Asian Cities, of which, of course, the city of Bangkok and the pollution department under Dr. Supat were members too. The so-called initiative, this had the aim to initiate something to happen. Okay, this initiative passed away a couple of years later, and nothing happened. My question is, same like my predecessor here, why does nothing happen in Thailand? Which needs to be done, and everybody knows there needs to be done something, and why is nothing going to happen? Thank you.
Anyone brave enough to answer that?
I'm not from Thailand.
Okay.
But I think as a citizen of the world, and as a citizen of any country that you care for, and you believe that there's something going drastically wrong, when things don't happen the way we need them to happen, we just need to keep the pressure. We have to keep talking about what is wrong and how we need to fix it. I think very often we witness in communities across the world when a problem persists for too long and there is no closure and there's nobody fixing it or addressing it, we tend to give up on it. And I think that's the most critical point that I would like to make here tonight. Don't give up. Keep asking the questions. You have the power to do so. Ask until you get the answers you need to see. And I think the more you ask, you will compel more people to ask these questions. And I think when you make the knowledge that you have accessible to more people will start engaging with government, with policymakers, and then we will start to see change. I think what tends to happen is that those who want to see change work in isolation. They're not really mobilizing more groups of people and communities. We need civil society to become proactively involved with these realities to implement and enforce change.
Okay. Supat, and then we're going to just go, everyone on the panel can have a final word if there are no more questions. Supat.
I would like to respond to the earlier question on the Clean Air Initiative for Asian cities. In fact, I was the chairperson of this initiative for several years in the past. And I would like to just to inform you that it's still alive. It's still alive, the Clean Air Initiative for Asian cities, but the name has been changed. Instead of Clean Air Initiative for Asian City, the name is changed to Clean Air Asia. And they are part of the organization of the Clean Air Week this week as well, very active. If you go to UN building at today or tomorrow, you will see a lot of people coming from Clean Air Asia. And one of them is here, the former, two actually, you know, the ladies and also the gentlemen in the back work for Clean Air Asia. So it's still alive, it's still alive.
Okay, we've got another lady there to ask a question.
Thank you. My name is Nokokanda Beni. I'm from the Standard South Africa Disaster Management School. I'm currently here in PIM. It is an honor to be here. I have a question based on the agricultural artificial rain that was initiated or was done. Whether was it successful, and doing that, did you see any positive results in terms of reducing the air pollution? Because I understand the main aim was to reduce the particles within the air, and they use the agricultural aviation. The second question would be, in terms of the burning of the farmers burning of the weed, what initiatives has the government introduced to those people in terms of practicing proper agricultural waste management efforts? I think this is also very important in terms of if you're going to give them or introduce an initiative in terms of how to do it properly, what is the government also offering them in terms of awareness? That is the other problem I think is here. Are they aware of how much they're contributing towards the air pollution in Thailand? Thank you.
Just quickly, you've got two questions there. They're both good ones. For the second one, just as a journalist here for many years, I know that there's been an enormous push by repeated Thai governments to get farmers, particularly in the north, where this problem is very, very bad, to stop burning their fields. They have a... Dr. Supat can probably give the details, but it's almost got to the stage where Thailand has been saturated with information about this total fire bans, but the problem is burning in nearby countries. So, in other words, you know, poor areas of Myanmar, which are truly poor, they haven't stopped that traditional habit of burning the stubble of their rice fields. Anyway, That is the second of your questions. The first question was it was about what the particles on what was it, artificial brain. Professor, do you know, Professor Hong, do you know anything? Have you heard of this? That.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Can I have it on the screen? This is reported in the last month. The city starts spraying water into the air. The same for the artificial rain. It can remove particulate matter, but only large particle. For small particle like PM2.5, it's ineffective. By spraying water into the air, it will not remove PM2.5. Why? Why? It's not there. It's not there. No, not this one. Not here.
You might get a job here, VJ.
I need.
Yeah. So no.
I want this.
Yeah, I got
this
it.
one.
I figured out.
Not this one. So I have to close this.
Yeah. We close this. Yeah.
Now. Yeah.
You have shift F4.
Yeah. I have to bring this up. Here.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Vijay.
On a serious note, I run a company which is $12 billion in its value right now. But at one point of time, I used to earn 100 and 500 rupees. That effectively is $2 or $10. When some of your equivalent people will in Delhi call me to say, my email is not working, will you come here? I do not know. And there was a very hilarious moment when a very senior journalist said that this screen is blank. I do not know where my mails have gone. And the laptop got shut, and then I went there, and I said, okay, so I saw that, and I said, so just repeat the problem. I used to use this thing for email, and it's no more here. And just for that matter, I clicked on a window that was minimized, and it popped back. And I said, is this the one? Yeah, thank you so much. How much will that be? Whatever you pay, ma'am.
What is happening when you have a drop of rain coming down like this? Only big particle will go straight and hit the droplet. But for the smaller particle, it will go around the droplet. It will not be caught by the raindrop. This is when you compare the heavy thing with a lot of weight. It's very difficult to change the direction. But for the thing which has lighter weight, it's very easy to go around. And PM 2.5 always go around the droplet. So it will not be caught. Only large particle that will be caught by the raindrop. So it's not effective in terms of removing PM 2.5.
So we're all going to die.
No, you will not.
No, on a serious note, I have a different question than it means. My assumption till now was, I come from India, Delhi, less rain versus, let's say, Singapore or Thailand would be. So does it, my guess in a pattern ways was, tropical cities where there is a lot amount of rain are better, cleaner air. Is there a myth then?
It's
it is like no, it's
it
not
can
fully
carve in some other gases, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide,
No, gases are part 2 of the problem, but my point was 2.5 PM, particle matter-led issues. So you're saying that rain solves PM10, not 2.5,
Not
and
2.5.
obviously the gases are separate. Yeah. So you mean that tropical cities are not better, and our assumption the sky looks blue is not really the blue sky? Imagine.
No, it's not effective.
How
that small part.
who's deceiving us? Nature, humans, businesses who are playing with us. Who are playing with us?
Human, you have to solve the problem by human.
Yeah.
Human, natural will not help you. Sometimes natural event also make it worse.
Yeah.
For example, every beginning of the inversion, as you said, that will cause the accumulation and make the pollution being more concentrated in the lower part of the atmosphere. Yep. That's the nature. Make it worse. So solving the problem, you need human effort.
Nature doesn't make it worse. Nature just finds a way to make us see it.
Okay.
I have a last question to ma'am here, if I may, considering there is no audience, or is there a question there? Okay.
Okay. We didn't really answer your first question, but I'm sorry about that. Have you got a question as well?
Hey, Dave Kendall from the Bangkok Post. First of all, thank you all so much for such a wide-ranging discussion. I think we all appreciate it. I lived in Shanghai for the last couple of years, and I found myself thinking last month of some of the bad pollution days in Bangkok. This would be like a good day in Shanghai during the winter. And then I asked myself, how is it I became so complacent and tolerant and accepting of pollution? So my question to you guys is, how do you energize people about this issue? How do you motivate them? Do you use fear? Do you try to make them angry? Like, how do you really get people? We're all very engaged here. How do you get the general public to really get on board with this? Beautiful. And if I might say, getting a Bollywood star on board who really knows what she's talking about is a masterstroke.
May I answer that question?
Yeah.
Because that's actually something that I feel really deeply about. You've asked a very important question. Thank you so much for asking it. I really think that one of the gaps and one of the reasons why there is such a lot of ignorance or apathy or even an acceptance or complacency, you know, the different adjectives, or they kind of talk of the fact that we're not willing to do more. One, I think that not enough people know the truth, and we are not telling enough stories to bring the truth home and encourage more people to act upon that truth. And the other thing is that we seem to have, I confessed this earlier when I was speaking in the evening, and I said, you know, it's very easy to shut down and say, this is really bothering me, I can't take it, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to talk about it. Or you accept it and you talk about it, and you find engaging ways to compel people. There is an amazing movement that was established by mothers year before last, in Delhi. The air pollution levels had intensified, had gotten really bad, and it's not a new phenomenon. It started about almost 11, 12 years ago. But not until up until year before last did mothers come together and establish a movement where they went and met government agencies, individuals, schools, hospitals, doctors, who could, and media, who could first convey the truth to people, highlight what are the causes of the problem, and then engage with government to ensure that systems were put in place. So something called My Right to Breathe was initiated by mothers, and they took their children along. And I think that visual and that representation of, educated women in the metropolitan or the capital of the country coming together and saying, this is enough. My fundamental right to life is my right to breathe. And if I cannot offer or guarantee my child that basic right, then what kind of a parent can I ever hope to be? So it's really about the narrative that we choose and the way we choose to unfold it. Does anger work? Yes, it can, to keep our passion alive. But I don't think anger works half as well as love does. I think it will be intrinsically our love for life itself, our love for those we love, and our families, and those around us, and our need to keep ourselves and those we love alive that will push us forward in impacting change and making people sit up and recognize the truth.
Very good. I think you're right.
I have a question to everyone who's, let's say, academic or...
You should come up here, Vijay.
And my question is that just like we know this is a hot weather because the temperature is 37 outside and 42, AQI is such a complex number, and then there is a normalization of country and whatnot. Why, and on behalf of UN, Clean Air Initiative, why don't we have some unit which is top of mind and stated like this, that it's a scroll that you goes and then you know this is a bad or a correct number, and that means that it is horrible or sad. The point is that AQI, PM, it's complex. I understand there are multi-variables, but why is it not humanly easy, cognitively easy to understand metrics that is talked so much about? We do talk about it once we see visually, only that day we wake up, but we as scientists, we as academia, we as lobby, we as agenda drivers haven't been able to find that single number that can be talked about. And that's a question too.
So my colleague sitting over there has the answer, so we should give him the microphone. But before you can walk up because there is no microphone there. But what I see, and I thank you for your good explanation of how we can raise awareness, because to me, it's fundamentally a political issue. And what I hear from many governments, so WHO, World Health Organization, worked for many years to establish a standard, which is the one that we refer to on
And then every country normalize it to their will.
Because, as you probably know, every country is a sovereign state, as your government would tell you, for example, and every state, as a sovereign nation, has the right to establish their own standards. So everything that we do is guidance, but that's where the population comes in, because if there is a popular demand that goes beyond, which in the end creates the politics of a country, then the situation probably will change, which is what happens to some extent in China. And for us, we launched a campaign called Breathe Life. As I said, it's a global campaign. It's just starting now. But many of the countries, and I was extremely surprised, many of the countries came back to us to say, we don't follow the WHO standards, even though there are these 3 different tiers, as our doctor was saying. 10 is actually the maximum, the best, but then there is 20 and 35 for different, let's say, to aim towards different targets. But then there are countries that have 50 or beyond, and countries do not want sometimes to take those political decisions because they, for different reasons. One being that if they can't accomplish it in their lifetime as a political party or a governor or a president, they prefer to set the level where they see that they can succeed. So if the success is far away, they just choose not to do it. And this is a completely political decision. A technical explanation can be given by my colleague Valentin.
Right. So my take, and a lot of my colleagues in UN Environment are thinking like I do. First of all, index, air quality index. We have been fooled, I would say, even, if I can dare to say that, that an index will be more informing the population about the risks. As we have heard today, there are indices everywhere, and they are calculated with different methods, and there is now a lot of mistrust. So we just going to basics. There is a movement right now which is called OpenAQ that we have partnered with in your environment, which is disseminating all this information that is coming from monitors and models back to the basics of concentrations, micrograms per cubic meter, basically the quantity of the particulates, the mass of the particulates per cubic meter, which I believe it's not that too difficult to communicate to the general public. And that is the raw data that is being measured, the quantity that is being measured. So we are now in a movement where we try to, as much as possible, to communicate these numbers, and they are actually the numbers that can directly be referring to the standards set by WHO. The standards for WHO are not an index; they are a concentration limit of 10 micrograms per cubic meter in the tier that is the most progressive, so to say. Now, having said that, it means a lot of the information that is out there can be rather misleading, and it can be misinterpreted. So we believe that one can also create, if you want to create an index, I don't think you necessarily need it, but you can set the brackets for how dangerous the pollution is on the basis of the raw data and the concentrations that are being measured. So this is what we are trying to advocate for rather strongly. In some countries, there's been for communication purposes, there's been still an interest in having indices communicating, mostly for historical reasons. I believe now, with the awareness that has been creating among the population, the lay persons are much more educated. I think it is time to try and show them the real numbers, and not try to tamper with those numbers and recreate those numbers into something that has the potential to misinform. So this is our take in UN environment mostly, and if this is also something that you would agree with, I think we can discuss.
We definitely have to take it offline, because the problem is that raw data itself should have been standard across the world, which it is, and we are talking about a density very clearly. I mean, the temperature of 35 degrees in every part of the world. In India it is called normal, in US it is called horrible, in northern countries it is called how the hell it is so. Now that is not the judgment that we have to put it, but the judgment should be that it is 35. If you want to judge it, please judge it. I'm surprised that why, as UN and together all of us, aren't talking about absolute value as a, why are we normalizing and indexizing and everything else? I mean, thank you so much for telling me FTSE, but I wanted the stock price. Would you please give me an absolute value of it? And why are we not treating like that as an obligation that we should consider that I need absolute value and I have a right to get absolute value? That should be the mission. Why are we talking about these normalized indices by political parties and governments when this is not even an intention of the communication?
Yes, I think there is one reason that I can think about, and it is, if we were to normalize against the current or the air pollution in general that is people are exposed to everywhere, to the most ambitious air quality guideline of WHO, we will all be in the red zone. Sorry.
No, I don't understand the red zone, green zone, blue zone. Like I said, temperature is temperature. It's an absolute truth. Why are we referring it in a? Why are we trying to make it cognitively easy to understand and then play with the relevant information to be interpreted in a wrong way? The question is, why does not a standard PM 2.5 equal to that is density dot? That's it. Now let's just understand. We'll judge it whether it is good, bad, ugly in a WH standard, in my country standard, in my house standard, in my family standard. We have all our standards. Now we are not judging you by standards. This is absolute information. Why is that information not part of everyday newspaper? Why is that information not part of every news alert that goes on CNN, BBC and anywhere else? Why are we trying to interpret that ACQ is better in I dash in CN? I mean, I'm just a little surprised. Is it an agenda behind this, or is it an intention to inform people around it? It's complex. It's very tough for us to understand. I tried understanding. I'm a engineer enough to understand mathematics and run a business, but it is too complex for each one of us in this room and us to understand. Just because it has got normalized on 55, any score more than 35 but below 55 will also be crossing 100, and 100 is bad. No, it is really bad. Can you just tell me what was the number, by the way? Was it 54 or 57? I'll understand that in Thailand 55 is it is, in India it was 65. Okay, that's fine, but can you tell me the absolute number? Is it too tough to ask? Is it too dumb to ask?
No,
I'm not sure what it is.
It's an extremely good question. Yeah, Breathe Life, the Breathe Life campaign is not using any air quality index. This is our answer, because we don't believe that this will serve
no
the
data
purpose.
is not correct and derived data is not correct. Something is needed. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, we got one last question here.
So, good evening, my name is Anne. I'm a worried mom and a citizen of Bangkok, frustrated of not finding the information I need to protect my family, my children who are small, and myself, my loved ones. So I decided to measure myself, and I bought a measurement device. So after the big peak of February, start measuring. So I have some data, and as you say, Dia, it's true, it's higher than what you find, if you can find it. So it's strange that there is not a bigger impulse to just measure, give us the data, so we can at least protect ourselves. Our schools can make policies, can install purifiers. Even we put in our school, in the class of my children, a do-it-yourself purifier with the fan and a HEPA filter in front of it. It works. The PM 2.5 goes down, very good. So there are very, very easy things that we as a citizen can do, but we don't have the information. And at the same time, why are people not more involved? It's because there was no noise straight away. It had to be very, very, very bad that it came in the newspapers. It was bad for a week already. So for me, it's a big question mark. Why not more just data that's easy to find? The PM 2.5, it's just there. You measure it, you read it, you put it out there. At least we as citizens can take action. Because hope, I heard hope before. I don't believe in hope. To change something, you need action. So to do action, you need data. So yeah, why?
I can't answer that question.
In Thailand, for sure, in Bangkok, because even that air, like I was following air visual, but had my doubts that were proven correct.
It's not a problem of Thailand or New Delhi. It's a global problem.
Yeah,
People just don't have a number.
Yeah, and then
it's just,
also the subject that you say, which measurement do you follow? I'm European, so I look 2.5, 25. My norm is 25. Above 25, I'm scared. I get scared. Thailand is 50. Why? America is 35. Okay.
Okay, I think we realise that some of the answers to that are it's a political thing set by ruling parties, but it may even be something simply as the collapse of the media as we've known it, and how Facebook is essentially, and other social media, gobbled up virtually all the advertising that used to go to traditional media sources. But it's also the fact that, you know, with a little bit of a search, you can go out and find some of this information. So it's coming down to personal action. The fact that it's taken, you know, the bad weather of recent times to bring this out, This is how it always occurs, probably. I do think, though, we're getting a bit of momentum, even from tonight. But it looks like we may have one last question from the man behind you, if I may, and then I'll ask our panellists if they have anything further to say, and we'll close. Robert.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim. Robert Kinnear, Alternative Innovations. It's actually not a question, but a point of information that I'm surprised it hasn't been mentioned already this evening. But today was the opening day of CETA 2018. CETA is the Sustainable Energy Technologies Asia, and it was opened by the Deputy Prime Minister of this country, and it's designed for answering many of the questions that have been raised here by experts from around the world in all aspects of energy and alternative energies. I was at it, it's very interesting. It's open tomorrow and Friday also. So I think anyone here who needs answers to the questions that were raised might just pop along there, and I'm surprised it wasn't actually more publicly aware.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I hope you're not selling tickets for seats. Helena.
Public information, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. Helena, would you, any final words?
A final word. It seems like you're interested because it's 9:30 and you're still here, and I think that's a good conclusion that this is a topic of interest. We need to talk more about it.
Thank you. Mark, you haven't said a lot tonight. Would you any final words?
So I think for as a person coming from private sector, I think what we can contribute, and I hope that all of the companies in the private sector can contribute. I think there are two things we can do. The first thing is we applied the technology on a mass scale. So for example, on our bikes, we try to apply the solar panels because we need to charge the smart locks, right? So we applied the solar panel to get the sunlight and charge the lock. And in the meantime, we use a technology through which when you pedal, you can regenerate power. So that's how we try to contribute to taking cars off the road. And also the second thing we can do, which is very important, is data, sharing the data with the government. Because we're talking about energizing the public, and to energize the public, you need to engage the government first. And the way we engage with the government is we share the data with them. So in many cities in China, they're actually, based on our data, they're building a bicycle highway in the city to encourage more people to ride bicycles and take more cars off the road. So I think that's what we're trying to do, and I just hope that it's a good start. It's a small step, but hopefully more of the companies can embark on this journey, and we can make the air cleaner.
Okay, Dia. Okay. Any more? Are you done?
I just want to say a very big thank you for having me here. It really means a lot. Thank you so much. You've been so kind, all of you. Thank you.
Okay. Any more words for any more of our panelists? Professor?
Okay, the final was, actually we know that air pollution is a really big risk factor. Actually the biggest risk factor for all these and all mortality is actually unhealthy diet. Then cigarette smoking, then lack of exercise, then air pollution. Then alcohol smoking, alcohol consumption. So it's bigger than alcohol. And but the other risk factor is we say the individual lifestyle factors. So everybody actually has a responsible for their bad action. That's why we can correct individually. Yeah. But air pollution is different. Individual does not have a responsibility for dirty air. The government, the country. So we really need governmental action to correct this.
Very good. Thank you. Tara.
I am one of the taxpayers of this country. I also expect the government to use my tax actually to do right thing. But right now they don't do it. So we have to do to start our own. Right now we are actually connecting with a wider academics institution and citizens around the country to actually keep monitoring air pollution. So thank Dear for saying one inspiring word. don't give up. So we're not going to give up on this one. Thank you.
Very good. Vijay?
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I can bet I'm not the only one who wants one number that we can imagine keep us.
Dr. Supat. Very good. Thank you.
In response to the lady, the last, air quality in Thailand is data information is available. You just go to www.pcd.go.th and you will get the air quality data. Or if you can download this application, Air for Thai. This is the mobile application that will give you air quality data all over the country. Not PM 2.5 yet. At the moment, it's up to PM 10. Yeah, but in the future, PM 2.5 will be added.
You can, you'll be able to come up after that. We're just about to close, but we'll share that. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, could you put your hands together for our wonderful guests?